you run an organization focused on state policy. Why do you have to have your notes in front of you? It's because what's happening at the state level does seem to be changing on the daily. And that can feel discomforting, disconcerting. It's a vocabulary lesson, actually. You might be having some dissonance. I know I am. I love to read the paper, but I don't feel like I want to have to read the paper every day to know what's happening in state policy when it comes to education. I want to be comforted that the team of folks that are making policy to help organize what happens for our kids are working together. So I'm going to take a breath, because that's not happening. And for me, I talk about this a lot, but I really want to recognize that if you're not in this space 24/7, it really is triggering about what's happening. It can make you feel down on democracy. So I want us to take a page from Brian Stevenson's work, who says that it's really important to cultivate hope in each other. So I really want to thank the folks from School Board School and the other sponsors. I want to thank Panera for enough carbs to get us through this day, and the coffee. And I want to thank each of you for showing up, because in community, we maintain hope. So, Honesty for Ohio Education is a coalition. We were founded in May 2021 when a friend texted me and said, "Have you seen House Bill 322 and 327? Ohio seems to be wanting to stop the honest and complete teaching of history. And you, Lisa, are a mom and a teacher and a community advocate who seems to be advocating for racial justice and equity." And I'm like, HB 322, never heard of it. Because I wasn't tracking what was happening at the state level with the intensity and the ferocity and the vigilance with which I now know and understand those of us who are advocates need to be doing. So we got on a Zoom call. Remember Zoom? We got on a Zoom call and started talking about those two bills. And before we knew it, House Bill 616, the Don't Say Gay bill, a copycat bill from Florida, was added to the agenda here in Ohio. And slowly but surely, our group of parents and representatives from Policy Matters Ohio and the ACLU and the League of Women Voters grew into a coalition of over 60, I'm looking at the number, almost 60, over 60 organizations who are now meeting, sharing energy and resources, and most of all, living that Maya Angelou quote, "When you know better, you can do better," right? Yes. Where are t-shirts of that, right? I need to get that on the back. So we are working in 3 places, and if there was something that if I was going to go to your house and wake you up in the middle of the night, this is what I hope you would walk away with. To pay attention to this work, we need to be thinking about what happens in the local school districts. Elisa just walked us through that. Then our State Board of Ed, and then our State House. 3 levers where action is happening, where policies and program is being made, where those of us who want to center students and families of all Ohioans need to be thinking about our work. So the Honesty Coalition is super excited that we have this pretty incredible strategic plan in Ohio that reminds us what we believe in. The members of the State Board of Education crafted this plan after dozens of meetings. And I'm going to do a quick aside. Elisa said that this will go out to folks. Everything with a gold border on it in this deck is a hot link. So you'll be able to hot link to anything that's gold, right? So you can quickly Google, but you can also just know that you'll have this content in your inbox soon. So this strategic plan, even with bad eyes, you can see the whole child is in the middle, because we also have something called the Whole Child Framework. Now, I'm going to be a little bit fresh. Like, it's not the whole child framework for straight kids or the whole child framework for white kids. It's the whole child framework for every kid in Ohio. I see people nodding their head like, right, every child. So I'm just going to take a breath on that, right? every child. All means all, right? So I'm guided by these two docs. They center me. They serve as North Stars. I'm excited to connect with elected officials. And can I get a quick hand raise? Who in the room is an elected official? I know we've got some folks. Can we just give them some snaps and some props for people who are serving right now? So awesome. So here are some North Stars to guide us. How ironic that there is a star in the middle of the Whole Child Framework, right? So I grade out local schools because Elisa took us into that space, and I'm going to have us start with what's happening at the State House. Look, it's another QR code. So if you want to scan that and put your address in, you can quickly find out who's your senator and who's your rep. And once it comes up, you can actually click. See, this is a teacher thing, like, let me not say anything for 10 seconds while everyone does this activity, instead of just teach right through it. You'll get the district number, which is really important content, and then you'll be able to click on your legislator's bubble, I don't know what else to call it, and find out what committees are they on? What press have they put out lately? How do you get on their mailing list? I'm in from Cleveland today, and I'm super excited that Juanita Brent is just flooding my inbox. Thank you, Rep. Brent. I like getting information from you. So, already a win. I can sit down. You've learned something new, right? Because you can also take this link and send it to your friends. You can make sure that a colleague that lives a mile from you has the same rep or the same senator that you do, because while I'm trying to be kind of in the neutral zone, there's a lot of gerrymandering happening in Ohio. If you've been reading the paper regularly, you know that. And Thursday night, might have been yesterday, but Thursday, the ACLU let us know that they're preparing a lawsuit because our maps are unfair. So hold on to this info. This is important, right? Hold on to this. So I do feel like I'm a social studies teacher. Can everyone get out a pen and paper? No, I'm just kidding. You know, you're going to get this deck so you'll know all of this. So hold on to those district numbers so that you know where we're going here. So Elisa talked a bit about where the laws come from and where the policies come from. And in Ohio, most of our education work, and this is super unique, but I'm going to boldly say, most of the laws in Ohio are housed in Title 33. So when we change our laws, we're usually changing a piece of Title 33. So you'll often see long numbers with dashes and dots. When we see proposed legislations, it's making amendments or adjustments to Title 33. And this is the Ohio State Code, right? This is, and I'll talk about the ways elections and legislators are responsible for this content for us as Ohioans. So, you know who your elected legislators are now. You're finding out what committees they sit on. I also want you to be curious about what bills they're sponsoring or co-sponsoring, right? So the sponsor is really the first person to put pen to paper about the bill. Although I am going to name that sometimes what happens, do you need me standing in front of that camera? Okay. That sometimes what happens is that those legislators aren't putting pen to paper. They're downloading something they got from a conference in Florida. And they're making slight changes to it, and that's where the language of copycat bills comes from, right? Don't say gay. You didn't hear those words in Ohio the first time. Where did you hear that language coming out of? Florida, right? So these copycat bills, these are not legislators meeting with their constituents and concerned people coming to them and being like, I'm super concerned about this. Can you create a new law? These are legislators and extremist politicians, is the language that I'm using now and that our coalition is using, who are taking outside influence and bringing it to Ohio in a way that provokes hate and harm in our communities. So I'm asking you to be informed, to know better about what's happening here so we can do better. Get curious. So we're going to move away from your individual legislator, and we're going to think about the people who are our legislators, right? These legislators aren't just your people, they're our people. And how many people have seen the Schoolhouse Rock? I'm just a bill. Right. Get rid of that background knowledge. That's not how a bill becomes a law, darn it! So you can play it for historical context or maybe for its musical interludes, but it's really important to know that while that's helpful, he's just sitting on the steps of Capitol Hill, right? That's not always how bills become laws. So I'm going to burst that bubble for just a few minutes. Now, once legislation is introduced, it goes into committee, and it gets a bill number. HB stands for House Bill. Remember HB 322, HB 327, HB 616? I was like spewing forth so confidently. I didn't know what HB meant. And SB stands for Senate Bill. So it's a really helpful way to organize your thinking, and it's also a great way to search for what's happening. So those bills get assigned to committee, and right now I'm going to move away from my really neutral voice and get into my firm agitator voice and say, look at the list of bills. The honesty, just honesty, is following right now. Nate and I will have handouts of this in both of our sessions today, or you can come find me. We're wearing honesty t-shirts if you want a copy of this. This is a lot. I'm a volunteer. This has like become my nighttime job, Googling these bills. But we have a great team, including some great policy analysts who on the Honesty website have created, well, I'm not going to say one-pager because that would be a lie, a 1 or a 2 or a 3-pager that explains each of these bills to you and lets you know what's happening. And in fact, let me go to the things that I should know. There are bills being introduced when the legislature's in session, which they are now, right? They had a summer recess. And these 2 years are called the 135th General Assembly, GA, now so many new acronyms, right? And every day, new bills are being brought forth and assigned to committee. And I'll be talking about a bill that Rep. Lojcik filed this week that is going to move us from nonpartisan elections to partisan elections at the State Board of Ed and the local board. You can hear my voice shaking, like this is just a real threat to democracy in our state, right? Moving from what should be a nonpartisan, we're all in this together. Does anyone watch High School Musical? No, maybe not. Okay. One of the things that's happened, and that honesty, a space that honesty lives in, is that proponent, opponent, and interested party testimony isn't happening in a way that cultivates engagement. So we might get an email on a Friday at 4 saying the State and Local Government Committee is meeting on Tuesday at 10 a.m. We're going to discuss these 3 bills. All testimony must be received by Monday at noon. You must fill out this PDF by hand, then fax it in, and your testimony must be attached to it. Actually, we're going to cap your testimony at 5 minutes. No, a lot of you came. We're going to cap it at 3 minutes. We're not going to ask you questions about your testimony. You're going to drive to Columbus, you're going to read your testimony, and then you're going to sit down. That's not democracy, right? We have this great process in place, but it's not always happening. And that's a bummer. That's not what I learned in school. However, I do want to make clear that it is the committee's chair, it is the committee chair's purview to decide how their meetings are run. So it's this tricky, complicated space where Rep. Byrd, who runs the Primary and Secondary Education Committee, I might want to call him out on my social media, right? And be like, what the heck, Rep. Byrd, 4:00 p.m., thanks for the email that I need to show up on Tuesday to talk about the idea that we shouldn't have social studies standards that say we should teach both sides of the Holocaust. I got to call off work. I got to write my testimony. I'm going to have to do it over the weekend. I got to find a fax machine. Okay, I'm just kidding. You can email it in, but it feels like a fax machine because you have to print out this piece of paper and handwrite it, right? But I also need to stay in good relationship with Rep. Byrd because I don't want to push at the wrong time and then be like, oh, Lisa Vahey's raising her voice. You know what? I'm going to make it. You have to testify in a blue dress today, right? I really do want to make sure that the pieces of democracy that are there continue. So what I do and what Honesty does and what we ask our folks that are engaged in our coalition to do is get the word out. Now you know. Fridays, we send an action alert. That's when you'll find out what committees are meeting the next week. And then Saturday morning, I'm going to treat myself to a chai tea latte, and I'm going to write my testimony and send it in, right? When I know better, I can do better. Oh, I'm going to get together with 3 friends. Oh, I'm going to add it to my text chat so people know. Oh, look, Honesty wrote my talking points for me. I'm just going to use what I know about a good 5-paragraph essay. Let me tell you I'm against this bill. Let me tell you why. Reason 1, reason 2, closing paragraph. Right? We all know how to do that. Yeah, don't laugh, English teachers, right? That 5-paragraph essay is serving you well. So, I want to say a quick note about this somewhat depressing real reason why a bill doesn't become a law like Bill sitting on Capitol Hill said. And that's that sometimes bad bills get added, no, all kinds of bills, not just bad bills. Let me check myself. All kinds of bills get added as amendments on other bills. So our budget was, oh my gosh, why am I spacing? Is it SB 33 or HB 33. I know it's 33, and it's one of those 33s. When Ohio passed our budget, right? I want a budget passed, don't you? Right? Like federal, state, I want budgets. So when our budget got passed, 3 bills that Honesty was advocating against were added as amendments. The first was the takeover of the State Board of Education. The second was a universal voucher system. And the third was the creation of 5 conservative thought centers at 5 public universities in our schools. Those were all added, that purple arrow. There wasn't testimony. There wasn't discernment, right? They just got added. So when you know better, you can do better. Just talk. Who knows what a turn and talk is? Come on, I know some people know. Thank you, Blake, with the hands up. Yep. Just turn to the person next to you and listen for the quiet signal because you each have 30 seconds. We have to keep moving. Just share a bit about what you're thinking or feeling right now about this information, right? It's okay to be in your feelings, but it's also okay to be in the energy of like, what? I'm signing up for this newsletter today, right? Turn and talk, 1 minute with a partner. Go ahead. I know a few of us are sitting next to like our best friend, and a few of us are sitting next to people that we don't know very well. And one of the most important things we can do is get good at talking about tough topics with our best friend and with strangers. Think about the skill that you just practiced today, right? This is important. This is the kind of work that we want to do in community. This isn't for solopreneurs. This is for community to do. Right? So you're practicing. Hey, nice to meet you. Great. I just learned this. What are you thinking? These are the skills we need in order to work and move towards light and love in a space that wants us to fail. Right? Just focus on that hope. Focus on the light and love. Okay, so let's keep learning. Local schools, State House, I just got to take another breath. Okay. The State Board of Education. What state is that? Right, terrific, woo! Okay, we're through the first hard part. Now it's hard to see this, but what you can see in this map in teeny tiny little, this is downloaded from the state's website, so they make it as complicated as possible for you to find your gerrymandered set of Senate districts that make up the 11 elected positions on the State Board of Ed. Every State Board of Ed district is made up of 3, I really struggle with this word, contiguous, okay, good, I'll take it, 3 districts that touch each other, only in appropriate ways, 3 Senate districts, and those 3 Senate districts make up your State Board of Ed district. So remember at the beginning when I was like, remember what your Senate district is? Look I already see people writing stuff down. Yes, I love that. Now you have the capacity to figure out who your elected State Board of Ed State Board of Ed member is. Your State Board of Ed, right? We each have an elected member. In addition, there are 8 appointed members as well. The governor is empowered to decide what Senate districts that touch each other make up those State Board of Ed districts. And they did change recently. And that ACLU lawsuit that's pushing us to think if our House districts and our Senate districts are gerrymandered, if you're a math person, you know, then by default, our State Board of Ed districts are also gerrymandered. So the governor also appoints the 8 appointed members of the State Board of Education, okay? So the governor creates the districts, then appoints 8 members. These are the folks that do this list of work. Just kidding. This is the work that the State Board of Ed did until, right, well, we had a clue that they weren't going to be doing this work anymore when, I have to go up to my screen, SB 1, HB 12 was added as an amendment. And the responsibility for these tasks were removed on October 3rd when the budget bill was enacted. Oh, there it is, HB 33. I got it half right because HB, SB, it has had to be 1. So what Senate Bill 1, or House Bill 12, as it was also running through the House, did is created a new department called DO. Now, if I was immature, I might say something about that acronym, but I'm almost 60. I'm not going to say anything about that acronym. And it replaces the Ohio Department of Education. The governor appoints the DO director and 2 deputy directors, one person who's focused on K-12 ed and one who's focused on workforce development. It reduces the responsibility of that State Department of Ed filled with elected and appointed folks struggling to work in coordination and collaboration with each other to discipline and licensure issues for educators and territory transfers, which is who goes to which schools based on addresses. It is a change in who has power. Now, I moved here from another state, and in that state, the governor had this role in my state. But the problem is that in 1953, we citizens voted to have a State Board of Education that did this work. We voters decided that this is how we should be working when it comes to state policy and education. And this is the work we wanted those folks doing. So it's not okay for a small group or a singular person or even advocates to be advocating to say, let's ditch that and create a new structure. This is a change in who has power. And I really believe that those of us who believe in democracy are fighting power systems right now that are moving power away from us and replacing it with hate and harm. And that's not okay. So here's a quick summary of what's happened since the budget bill was passed. Brave, brave members of the State Board of Education, including Katie Hoffman, who's in this room, filed suit and said, this isn't okay. Raise your hand if you love being a plaintiff in a lawsuit. What? No one loves being a plaintiff in a lawsuit. But when you know better, you do better. And so we have members of our State Board of Ed who are stirring up some good trouble. Some necessary trouble. Let's give them some snaps and some claps, right? They need to feel that energy. So there was a temporary restraining order, which I didn't know was a TRO, but now I know that that's what that stands for. And there was an injunction hearing set, and during that injunction hearing, that TRO was extended. However, Governor DeWine decided, I'm not going to pay attention to that temporary restraining order. The takeover is still going to go into effect. And now, the DEW is operationalized, and our State Board of Ed, which meets usually the second Monday and Tuesday of the month, and this month is Indigenous Peoples Day, so they're supposed to meet on October 10th and 11th, and I was kidding with Karen Leith this morning. Last night at 11, I went onto the State Board of Ed website to be like, where is the agenda for the meeting next week? And I was greeted by that red font, October 10th and 11th. State Board of Education meeting postponed.